Hello, dynasty women. When a wolf goes silent, it's not because it's afraid, it's because it's deciding what happens next. A Sigma female operates the same way. She's not the loudest in the room, nor the one who seeks attention, but the moment you cross a certain line, something shifts. And trust me, you'll feel it before you even understand what's happening. Here's a fact for you. Studies in behavioral psychology suggest that highly independent and intelligent individuals are more likely to disengage rather than react aggressively when faced with conflict. Translation: a Sigma female won't scream, argue, or beg for respect. She'll simply recalibrate her entire approach to you, and that should terrify you more than any outburst ever could. Now let's get one thing straight. Triggering a Sigma female's defense mode doesn't mean she's going to start plotting revenge like a villain in a soap opera. No, she's far more efficient than that. When she senses disrespect, betrayal, or manipulation, she doesn't explode, she evolves. And that evolution usually involves making you irrelevant. So if you've recently felt a sudden chill in the air, like the warmth of her presence has evaporated overnight, chances are you've triggered her defense mode. The real question is, do you even know what you did wrong? Buckle up, because what you're about to discover might just explain why she's treating you like a distant memory. Number 1. The calculated kindness. She doesn't lash out, she doesn't argue, and she definitely doesn't beg for understanding. Instead, she does something far more unsettling. She remains kind. But it's not the warmth you once knew. It's distant, measured, almost clinical. This is calculated kindness, a silent statement that she's already shifted her perspective on you. A Sigma female's kindness isn't given out of obligation or social politeness. It's a choice. It's deliberate. And when you've triggered her defense mode, that kindness transforms into something sharp, something unsettling. She'll still respond if you speak to her. She may still offer a nod of acknowledgement, but the way she does it, there's a detachment, a precision in her tone that makes it painfully clear. You are no longer in her trusted circle. What makes this so unnerving is that it removes any room for emotional confrontation. There's no yelling, no passive-aggressive remarks, no heated debates. You won't get the satisfaction of an argument because she's already disengaged from the fight before you even realize there was one. And when a Sigma female decides she's done, she doesn't need to announce it. She lets you feel it. That polite but distant "hope you're doing well" text, it's not an invitation to reconnect, it's a boundary, that effortless small talk when you cross paths. It's not an attempt to rebuild. It's proof that she no longer sees you as significant enough to affect her. This is power in its quietest form. There's nothing more humbling than realizing that someone who once valued you has now placed you in the category of just another person in the room. Not hated, not resented, just indifferent. And that's the point. When a Sigma female switches to calculated kindness, she's not being nice because she cares. She's being nice because she doesn't. And by the time you recognize it, she's already miles ahead, mentally and emotionally, leaving you wondering how you lost access to something so rare. Number 2. The chess master's patience. A Sigma female never acts on impulse when she feels disrespected, betrayed, or undervalued. She doesn't lash out, she doesn't immediately walk away, and she certainly doesn't seek validation through confrontation. Instead, she waits. And in that waiting, she watches. Not in a dramatic, revenge-seeking way, but in a methodical, almost surgical manner, analyzing, assessing, and deciding whether you're worth any further investment of her time, energy, or trust. This is the chess master's patience, a trait that makes her nearly impossible to manipulate. Unlike those who react emotionally at the first sign of conflict, she gives you the space to reveal your true nature. She understands that people show their most honest selves when they think no one is watching closely. So instead of engaging in a back-and-forth battle, she lets you play out your next moves, completely unaware that you're being silently evaluated. If you've triggered her defense mode, she's already mentally distanced herself. But she's not done watching. She wants to see if your behavior was an anomaly or a pattern. Was it a moment of carelessness, or is this who you are? Will you self-correct without being told, or will you continue down the same path, proving that her withdrawal was justified? She won't give hints. She won't ask for an apology. She won't send passive-aggressive messages. Why? Because she refuses to teach people how to treat her. Either you recognize where you went wrong and adjust, or you don't. And that, in itself, gives her the final answer she needs. This patience is unnerving because it's so calm, so controlled. You won't even realize you're being tested until it's too late. You'll just notice the gradual shift, the slight decrease in warmth, the conversations that feel less natural, the way she starts responding later and with less interest. By the time you recognize what's happening, she already has her answer. And once she's made her decision, it's final. The moment she determines that you're not worth the effort, you've already been removed from her world. You just don't know it yet. That's the power of a Sigma female. She doesn't react, she strategizes. And by the time you see the consequences, she's already 5 moves ahead, leaving you wondering how you lost a game you didn't even know you were playing. Number 3, the invisible war. There's a moment when something shifts. Not in words, not in obvious actions, but in the energy between you and a Sigma female. It's subtle, yet undeniable. One day you feel secure in your dynamic with her, and the next, something feels off. Conversations don't flow the same way. Her attention feels harder to earn. The balance of power that once felt effortless now leans in her favor. And the worst part? You can't pinpoint exactly when or how it happened. This is the invisible war, a battle you never saw coming, yet one you suddenly find yourself losing. When you've triggered her defense mode, a Sigma female doesn't argue, beg, or explain herself. Instead, she pulls back. Not physically, but in a way that's far more disorienting. Her presence becomes lighter, more elusive. You catch yourself overanalyzing her responses, wondering if you did something wrong. And that's when the realization creeps in. You're the one chasing now. This shift in dynamics isn't accidental. It's a test, one you didn't know you were taking. She's watching to see if you'll recognize the change, if you'll acknowledge your misstep, or if you'll continue down the same path, unaware that you're already being phased out. What makes this war so unsettling is that she doesn't fight in the traditional sense. There are no confrontations, no dramatic exits. She simply removes the parts of herself that once made you feel important. The warmth in her voice, gone. The effortless connection, replaced by polite indifference. The inside jokes and shared moments no longer referenced. And the more you sense the distance, the harder you try to close the gap. But that's the trick, you can't force your way back in. She doesn't operate on desperation or guilt. She operates on value, and if you've lost yours in her eyes, the war is already over. By the time you realize the power dynamic has shifted, she's already moved on. Not in anger, not in hatred, but in a way that's far worse, complete emotional detachment. And in that moment, you understand. The battle wasn't between you and her. It was between you and your ability to hold her respect. And you lost. Number 4, the disappearing act, but not the way you think. A Sigma female doesn't disappear in the way most people do. She doesn't block you, delete your number, or make a dramatic exit. That would be too obvious, too predictable. Instead, she pulls off something far more unsettling. She fades, not into absence, but into the background. She becomes so subtly distant that you don't even realize she's leaving until she's already gone. This isn't ghosting. Ghosting is abrupt, emotional, and often reactionary. A Sigma female doesn't react, she calculates. When she enters defense mode, she won't cut you off immediately. Instead, she'll slip into a space where she's still technically there, but you can feel the difference. She speaks less, contributes less, and stops investing energy into interactions. She's no longer fully engaged, yet she doesn't completely disappear either. It's a psychological vanishing act, one that leaves you questioning whether she's actually gone or if you just imagined the shift. The reason she does this is simple. She's watching. She's analyzing your reaction, observing whether you notice the distance, whether you take action to correct the situation, or whether you continue as if nothing has changed. She's gathering data, not based on what you say, but on what you do in response to her withdrawal. Most people panic when they sense they're losing someone's attention. They start overcompensating, texting more, pushing for interaction, trying to figure out what went wrong. But this is where the Sigma female's test comes into play. If you chase, she knows you're acting out of insecurity. not genuine connection. If you don't notice or care, she sees that as confirmation that she was right to pull away. Either way, she gets her answer, without ever having to confront you directly. By the time you finally realize what's happening, it's usually too late. She has already made her decision, already shifted her focus elsewhere. And the worst part, you never even got the chance to say goodbye because she never truly left in the traditional sense. She simply removed her presence, and in doing so, proved just how unnecessary she had become in your world, long before you ever realized it. Number 5. The anti-revenge strategy. Revenge is too emotional, too messy, and frankly a waste of energy. A Sigma female knows this. That's why she doesn't bother with petty retaliation, mind games, or dramatic confrontations. Instead, she executes a far more devastating strategy. She makes you irrelevant. For most people, revenge means proving a point, making the other person feel what they felt, or ensuring some form of emotional justice. But a Sigma female doesn't need that kind of validation. If you've triggered her defense mode, she doesn't want to hurt you. She wants to erase you, not in an obvious way, not with anger or bitterness, but with something far worse, complete and utter indifference. She won't badmouth you. She won't try to ruin your reputation. She won't even acknowledge your existence beyond what is absolutely necessary. It's not silent treatment, it's erasure. You simply stop being a relevant part of her world. Conversations that used to include you now flow effortlessly without your presence. Things she once associated with you become just things, void of meaning, stripped of any emotional weight. And the scariest part? She does it naturally, as if you were never significant to begin with. This kind of detachment is brutal because it leaves you with no closure, no fight to win, no way to prove yourself. If she had sought revenge, at least that would mean you still mattered enough for her to react. But when she removes you completely, it sends a harsher message. You are no longer worth even a thought. People who crave power over others struggle with this because there's nothing to push against. No anger, no retaliation, no opportunity to manipulate emotions, just a void where there was once connection. You can try to provoke her, try to get a reaction, but you'll be met with polite indifference at best, total disregard at worst. And that's the real punishment. Because while revenge keeps the connection alive, erasure means you've already lost. Number 6. The aura shift. There's a moment when everything feels the same on the surface, but something deep in your gut tells you it's not. The words she says, the way she moves, even the slight smile she gives, it all seems normal. But it isn't. Something about her is different, and you can't quite put your finger on it. That's the aura shift. A Sigma female doesn't need to raise her voice or openly express her irritation when she's triggered. Instead, her entire energy recalibrates. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's undeniable. If you're even remotely perceptive, you'll feel it before you see it. Her presence, once warm or at least neutral, turns into something controlled, too controlled. It's the kind of calm that makes people uneasy, the stillness of someone who has already made a decision but hasn't revealed it yet. She might still engage in conversation, might still be polite, but something is off. The natural rhythm between you has shifted, and whether you acknowledge it or not, you feel the distance. This isn't passive aggressiveness. It's not about being cold or rude, it's containment. A Sigma female knows that emotions are powerful, and instead of letting them explode outward, she turns them inward, refining them into precise, deliberate action. What that action will be? That depends entirely on how you handle the shift. Some people panic when they sense it. They overcompensate, try harder, attempt to get a reaction out of her just to confirm what they already suspect. Others dismiss it, ignoring the clear change in energy, until they realize too late that she was already detaching while they were pretending nothing was wrong. And then there are those who recognize the shift for what it is, a warning. A silent but unmistakable signal that something in the dynamic has changed, and whether they acknowledge it or not will determine whether they ever get back into her good graces. Because when a Sigma female's aura shifts, it's not random. It's the quiet before the storm, and only she knows whether that storm will pass or leave destruction in its wake. Number 7. The unread message syndrome. There's a difference between being ignored and being deprioritized. When a Sigma female doesn't respond to your messages, it's not because she wants to play mind games or manipulate your attention. It's because, in her world, you no longer require an immediate response, or any response at all. At first, you might not think much of it. A missed reply here, a delayed text there. But over time, a pattern emerges. Where she once responded with interest and engagement, now your messages sit unread for hours, sometimes days. And when she does reply, it's brief, polite, but lacking the depth or enthusiasm you were once used to. This is the unread message syndrome, and it's the beginning of your descent into irrelevance. Sigma females don't ghost people impulsively. That's too reactionary, too emotional. Instead, they reorganize their priorities, and if you've triggered her defense mode, you're no longer high on that list. She sees your messages, sometimes even reads them, but responding feels unnecessary. There's no urgency, no excitement, no sense of obligation. You are now a low-priority notification in her life, something she might get to if and when she feels like it. The key thing to understand is that this isn't about revenge. She's not trying to punish you. In fact, she's not even thinking about you that much anymore. And that's what makes this shift so unsettling. If she were angry, if she were still emotionally invested, she'd argue, confront, or make it clear that something is wrong. But the fact that she doesn't, that's what should worry you. Because when a Sigma female truly values someone, she makes time. She engages. She reciprocates. But when she's done, she doesn't block. She doesn't make a scene. She simply moves you to the background of her life, where your presence no longer matters enough to warrant a reply. And that's when you realize the harsh truth. You haven't just lost her attention, you've lost your place in her world. Number 8. The no more teaching rule. A Sigma female isn't the type to waste time on meaningless conversation. When she speaks with purpose. Whether it's sharing ideas, offering guidance, or dropping insights that make you see things from a new perspective. She doesn't do this for everyone, only for those she respects and believes are worth the investment. But the moment she stops, that's when you should worry. When a Sigma female shuts off her teaching mode, it's not out of frustration or spite. It's because she no longer sees the point. She has mentally checked out, concluded that her energy is better spent elsewhere, and made the silent decision to stop pouring into you. She doesn't announce it. She doesn't explain why. She simply stops. At first, it might seem subtle. She no longer goes out of her way to break things down for you. She doesn't offer insights like she used to. Conversations that were once filled with depth now feel surface level, transactional. You might think she's just tired or preoccupied, but the truth is much colder. You've been mentally deprioritized. This shift is significant because a Sigma female doesn't share knowledge just to hear herself talk. She does it as a form of connection, as a way to build and strengthen bonds. The moment she senses that her words are being wasted, whether through lack of appreciation, ignorance, or simple disinterest, she cuts the supply. And once she stops teaching, she stops seeing you as someone worth engaging with on a meaningful level. She won't argue. She won't try to correct you. She won't even let you know that you've lost access to the best version of her. She just lets you remain in your ignorance, while she shifts her focus to people who actually listen, actually grow, actually deserve her time. This is one of the most brutal ways a Sigma female withdraws, because it's not just about losing her attention. It's about losing her respect. And once that's gone, no amount of chasing, apologizing, or proving yourself will bring back the depth you once had. Number 9. The future erasure tactic. A Sigma female doesn't need to announce that you're being phased out. She simply removes you from her future without a word. No drama, no heated conversations, no obvious signs of resentment, just a quiet, calculated shift that makes it painfully clear. You no longer exist in her long-term vision. This is the future erasure tactic, and it's one of the most devastating ways she disengages. At first, you might not even notice. Conversations feel normal, interactions seem unchanged, but then something clicks. The plans she used to discuss with you, where to travel next, future projects, shared experiences, no longer include your name. She speaks about the future in a way that subtly excludes you, as if she's already rewritten the script of her life without you in it. And the most unsettling part? She never even told you she was editing you out. You might hear her talk about events she's planning, goals she's pursuing, places she wants to explore, but there's no more we, no more us. The unspoken invitations that were once automatic are now gone, and you start to realize you're no longer part of the equation. It's not accidental. It's deliberate. This isn't a test. It's not an attempt to make you chase or beg for your place back. It's her way of telling you, without telling you, that your presence is no longer necessary. If you call it out, she won't argue. She'll simply confirm what you've already suspected. And if you don't notice, even better. It just proves she was right to erase you in the first place. The reason this hits so hard is because it's not fueled by anger or spite. It's fueled by clarity. A Sigma female does not make space for people who don't value their place in her life. The moment she sees you as a misalignment with her path, she lets you go. Not with a confrontation, not with an explanation, but with a quiet shift that makes you realize you were already gone long before you noticed. Number 10. The all-seeing Ice Queen. A Sigma female's presence is powerful, not because she demands attention, but because she commands it without a single word. And when she's triggered into defense mode, that presence shifts into something far more unsettling, cold, calculating, and unshakably detached. This is the all-seeing Ice Queen, a version of her that doesn't need to lash out, argue, or make a dramatic exit. Instead, she lets her eyes do the talking. And if you're on the receiving end of that gaze, you already know it's over. Her expression doesn't change. She may still be polite, still engaging in conversation, still physically present. But her eyes? They tell a completely different story. The warmth that was once there is gone, replaced by a detached, almost clinical level of observation. She sees you, but not in the way she used to. She's no longer looking at you. She's looking through you, like she's studying something that no longer holds significance. This shift is devastating because it strips away all illusions. If you once felt important to her, that look alone will make you question whether you ever truly mattered in the first place. It's not a glare, not an expression of anger, but an absence of emotional investment so profound that it makes even the most confident people feel exposed and small. And the worst part? She's already gone. That look isn't a warning. It's confirmation. She has already made her decision, already detached herself mentally and emotionally. You're standing in front of her, speaking, existing. But in her world, you've already been erased. Most people can't handle this. They scramble to regain her attention, trying to fill the silence with explanations, excuses, or forced charm. But nothing works. Because once a Sigma female has reached this level of detachment, there's no coming back. You don't get closure. You don't get a second chance. All you get is one final look that reminds you exactly what you lost, and exactly why you'll never get it back. Number 11. The ruthless memory purge. A Sigma female doesn't just walk away. She rewrites the story as if you were never a significant part of it. When she's done, she doesn't hold on to memories, doesn't replay past moments, and certainly doesn't romanticize what once was. Instead, she erases you in real time, methodically stripping away any emotional weight you once carried. This is the ruthless memory purge, and when it happens, you'll feel it. At first it's subtle. She stops bringing up inside jokes, shared experiences, or moments that once defined your connection. The stories she used to tell that included you, now they're told in a way that removes your role entirely, like you were just a background character in a life that's always been hers alone. Conversations that used to start with, "Remember when we," simply don't happen anymore. Not because she forgot, but because she has chosen not to remember. A Sigma female doesn't cling to the past. She sees no value in nostalgia for people who no longer serve a purpose in her world. The moment she decides you no longer belong in her life, she begins the process of mentally deleting your presence. Not through anger, not through bitterness, but through a quiet, ruthless recalibration of her own history. And here's the part that truly stings. This isn't something she forces. It's natural. She's not pretending to forget. She's simply removing the meaning attached to the memories. The places you once went together, just places. The moments you once shared, just moments. She doesn't dwell, doesn't mourn, doesn't hold on. She moves forward with unapologetic efficiency, proving that emotional attachment is a choice, and she has chosen to disengage. This is what makes a Sigma female different. Most people need closure, need time to process, need to find ways to let go. She doesn't. She simply stops carrying the weight of your existence, and just like that, you become nothing more than a footnote in a book she's already rewritten. Number 12. The challenge disappearance. A Sigma female isn't one to engage in shallow interactions. She thrives on intellectual depth, on pushing boundaries, on challenging the people she respects to think beyond the obvious. If she debates with you, questions your ideas, or challenges your perspective, it's not about proving she's right. It's about testing the strength of your mind. But when that stops, that's when you should be concerned. The challenge disappearance is one of the most telling signs that you've lost your place in a Sigma female's world. She doesn't argue, doesn't push back, doesn't engage in those deep discussions that once defined your connection. It's not because she suddenly agrees with everything you say, it's because you're no longer worth the effort. At first, it might seem like she's just being agreeable, but the truth is far colder. She's not debating anymore because she no longer sees you as an intellectual opponent worthy of the challenge. She has mentally checked out, filed you under not stimulating enough, and moved on to more engaging pursuits. The unsettling part is that she won't announce this shift. She won't say, "I don't find you interesting anymore." She'll simply withdraw the energy she once invested in questioning your perspectives, refining your thoughts, and elevating the conversation. You'll notice her responses become passive, surface level, devoid of the fire that once made every discussion a battle of wits. And the worst part? She lets you think you've won. No more counter-arguments, no more sharp insights, no more deep dives into ideas, just polite nods, vague agreements, and a disengagement so subtle that you don't even realize what's happening until you do. Until you realize the debates weren't about ego, but about respect. And now, she simply doesn't see you as someone worth sparring with anymore. By the time you notice, it's too late. She's already found someone else to challenge, someone who actually challenges her back. When a Sigma female enters defense mode, she doesn't explode, beg for understanding, or waste time proving her worth. She simply withdraws, recalibrates, and restructures her world without you in it. Every shift is silent but deliberate, every action measured but final. By the time you realize the distance, it's not forming. It's already formed. The most dangerous mistake you can make is assuming she's playing games. She's not. A Sigma female isn't testing your patience, fishing for attention, or hoping you'll chase her. Her responses, or lack thereof, aren't designed to manipulate. They're designed to signal a decision that has already been made. She's not seeking revenge. She's seeking peace. And peace to her means removing anything or anyone that disrupts her balance. Once you've triggered her defense mode, there's no loud confrontation, no heated back and forth, no dramatic exits. Instead, she erases, archives, and moves forward with unapologetic precision. You won't always know the exact moment she decided to let go. You'll only feel the aftermath, the void where her energy used to be, the absence of the depth she once offered, the unsettling realization that you are no longer a thought in her mind, let alone a presence in her life. This isn't about pettiness or ego. It's about self-respect. A Sigma female doesn't hold grudges. She simply values herself enough to walk away when her time, energy, or presence is no longer appreciated. And when she does, there's no coming back. Because the moment she decides you're no longer worth the investment, she doesn't just leave. She disappears. If this insight into the mind of a Sigma female has left you speechless, intrigued, or even a little unsettled, then you definitely don't want to miss what's coming next. Hit that subscribe button and join a community that dives deeper, thinks sharper, and sees beyond the surface. If you've ever witnessed these defense mechanisms firsthand, or maybe even triggered them yourself, drop a comment below. Let's talk. Let's debate. Let's uncover the truth most people aren't ready to hear. And of course, don't forget to like this video because every click tells us you're ready for more raw, unfiltered, and brutally honest content. This isn't just a channel, it's a mindset. So if you're ready to see the world through a Sigma lens, you know what to do, like comment, subscribe, and stay ahead of the game.